So now in this video we are going to study about our limbic system. Limbic is coming from the limb, and limb is like your limbs. These are actually the borders or margins of your body, like the limbs. So this is a border or margin type area, or the border zone between the cerebral cortex and the hypothalamus. So for example, this is your hypothalamus and this is the rest of the cerebral cortex. So between the hypothalamus and the rest of the cerebral cortex, this is a border or limb type of area, and this is the limbic system. Now the limbic system has a lot of components. First of all, it has main two things are hippocampus and amygdala. Then the hippocampal formation has all these things, which are the parahippocampal gyrus, the hippocampal formation, then the fornix, then the fimbriae, then the alveus, all of these things. First of all, we are going to look at this hippocampal formation. Now it consists of mainly three things, that are the hippocampus, the dentate gyrus, and the parahippocampal gyrus. I will explain that to you in a diagram in a while. The hippocampus is actually a curved elevation that extends through the entire length of floor of the inferior horn of lateral ventricle. First of all, you should know that it is present in the floor of the inferior horn of lateral ventricle. Then another thing, that hippocampus is so named because of its appearance, which generally resembles a seahorse in the coronal section. Let's go to the coronal section. First of all, as I told you, that this hippocampus is going to be like a border between your hypothalamus and the rest of the cortex. So this is what it is. So now this is your thalamus, this is your amygdala, this is the hippocampal formation, whole thing. Now it is superiorly continuous with the fornix. You should always remember this. Now let's have a look at the coronal section of the hippocampus. So now this is the coronal section of the hippocampus. Doesn't it look like a seahorse to you? So first of all, this hippocampal formation has this dentate gyrus. Then with the dentate gyrus, we are moving upwards and we are coming to this hippocampus proper, then this subiculum, then this parahippocampal gyrus, and then this splenial sulcus that is a little bit over here. So now you know that these are the fimbria. Then we have another thing, that is the alveus. First of all, we need to know where and how the things are located. Firstly, we have the dentate gyrus, then moving upwards we have this hippocampus proper, then subiculum, then parahippocampal gyrus. I told you that the hippocampus is in the floor of the lateral ventricle. So you can see this is the lateral ventricle, and superiorly it will have a roof, and inferiorly it has this floor. So the floor of the lateral ventricle has this whole hippocampus running near it. Now they tell you that the convex ventricular surface of the hippocampus is actually covered with ependyma, and beneath this ependyma we have white matter, which is the alveus. Then we are going to go to fimbriae. Let's go to that. Now you can see the coronal section of the hippocampus, and this you can see this alveus. Alveus is like a white matter, and white matter is what? It has nerve fibers. So this is alveus or the white matter. It is just beneath the ventricular surface or the ependyma. And the collection of this alveus or white matter, it's actually fimbriae. And now they tell you that this dentate gyrus, this tooth-like gyrus, it is between. Now this dentate gyrus, superiorly it has fimbriae, and inferiorly it is up to the level of the parahippocampal gyrus. Now they tell you that this dentate gyrus is actually continuous with some other things. Let's move to another diagram to understand that. Now in this diagram you can easily see this whole thing, which is the dentate gyrus. Now this dentate gyrus, it goes up to the level of this fornix. Then they tell you that it becomes close with the corpus callosum, and then moving upward it forms this region, which is actually the indusium grucium, or however you pronounce it. Now this indusium grucium, so this dentate gyrus, it goes upwards till the level of the corpus callosum to become continuous with the indusium grucium. Now this indusium grucium is actually white matter region, and it has a medial stria which is medially and a lateral stria which is laterally. So this is how posteriorly it is connected with the corpus callosum and the indusium grucium. That is the posterior portion of this denticular gyrus, which is moving upwards, Now, when I was telling you that there is this thing alveus, and the hippocampus has a white matter region which is an alveus, and alveus has medially these fimbriae. So these fimbriae, they actually emerge and they become continuous with the body of the fornix. So this is how the connection is between the hippocampus and the fornix. So also in the diagram that is given in your book, it shows you this region that is your hippocampus, and this hippocampus has this dentate gyrus, and I told you that the dentate gyrus was then continuous with the posteriorly, it was continuous with those indusium and the corpus callosum. Now this dentate gyrus has a lot of, you know, alveus, and alveus, they make the fimbriae, which is somewhere over here. Medially, they make the fimbriae. Now, this is the dentate gyrus. After that, we have this hippocampal sulcus. So, this is the hippocampus sulcus. And between the hippocampus sulcus and this collateral sulcus, the whole this snake type area, this is the parahippocampal gyrus. So, you can see the between this hippocampal sulcus and the collateral sulcus, this whole area of your limbic system is known as the parahippocampal gyrus. After that, we come to this, that it is continuous with the hippocampus along the medial edge of the temporal lobe. So if you want to know where this whole thing is actually located, it is located in the medial end of the temporal lobe. If you look at it over here in this diagram, you can see this whole hippocampus and hippocampal formation, and this thing that is going up, the parahippocampal gyrus, this parahippocampal gyrus, this green region, it is located in the medial end of the temporal lobe, and just anterior to it we have this amygdaloid body, which we are going to study right now. Then this dentate gyrus, as I told you, this dentate gyrus is now becoming continuous with this fornix, which is this pink structure. So dentate gyrus is over here, and then this become continuous with the fornix and the whole apparatus over there, the corpus callosum, etc. Another thing about the fornix was that your fimbriae, if we can visualize over here, if you have your fimbriae, they are going to be continuous with this whole pink apparatus, which is your fornix. So if there are some fimbriae or alveus over here, so they are going to be continuous with this. The dentate gyrus is going to be continuous with the corpus callosum and the indusium grusium, and this is the parahippocampal gyrus. And the hippocampal formation was between those fimbriae, etc. Also, the parahippocampal gyrus is between between this hippocampal fissure and the collateral sulcus. So this parahippocampal gyrus is between the hippocampal sulcus and the collateral sulcus. Now we have the amygdaloid nucleus, and it is so named because of its resemblance with the almond, and it is situated partly anteriorly and partly superiorly to the tip of the inferior horn of lateral ventricle. So let's look at it. So as you can see in this diagram, you can see all the ventricles, and this is our lateral ventricle, and this is the anterior horn of the ventricle, and this is the interventricular foramen, and this was the posterior horn, and this is the inferior horn. And in relation to this inferior horn, so for example, if this is your lateral ventricle, the anterior horn, the interventricular region, the posterior and the inferior horn, so they told you that amygdala is going to be partly anterior and partly superior to this inferior horn of the lateral ventricle. So this is actually the location of this amygdaloid nucleus, which is the almond-shaped nucleus of the limbic system. Also, we had this lateral ventricular over here with its inferior horn, and you can see that a little bit anterior and superior to the inferior horn of the lateral ventricle, we have this amygdaloid nucleus. Also, this whole thing is actually the caudate nucleus. So the amygdala or amygdaloid nucleus is fused with the tip of the caudate nucleus, and it is anterior and superior to the fourth ventricle inferior horn. So you can visualize the whole location, fused with the caudate nucleus tip, and it is anterior, you can see anterior and superior to the inferior horn of the lateral ventricle. Also, this is the amygdaloid nucleus, and this amygdaloid nucleus has a little bit region. One is the central region, one is this corticomedial region, and one is this basolateral region. The basal region is laterally placed, that is why it's basolateral. The cortical portion is medially placed, that is why it's corticomedial, and then in between it has the central region. Now you can see from the amygdala, from the posterior aspect of the amygdala, there is this green fibers emerging. These green fibers are actually the stria terminalis. So these green fibers of the stria terminalis, they emerge from the posterior side of your amygdala, and due to this they can be divided into a basolateral and a corticomedial group. Let me tell you this. So this was the amygdaloid nucleus, and superiorly it has this corticomedial region, this basolateral region, or if we can make them a little bit different, this is the amygdaloid nucleus, this is the corticomedial, and this is the basolateral region, this is the medial portion, this is the lateral. So if from the posterior aspect of this region the fibers of the stria terminalis are emerging, so these are the corticomedial stria terminalis fibers, and these are the basolateral stria terminalis fibers, and they are going to emerge from the posterior side of this amygdaloid nucleus. Now in the next portion of this video, we are going to discuss the connecting pathways.